What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be reviewing this video right here. It's called Why Watching Movies Alone Won't Make You Fluent. This was dropped into my Discord. It actually kicked up a little bit of a storm in the comment section, so I figured let's check it out together because, well, I've learning languages via every single method pretty much out there. But I have had a little random observation today, okay? So for the last 2 hours, I have been practicing my Chinese, my speaking Chinese, in preparation for the video games I plan to play on my channel. And now I'm doing a video in English. And I've noticed that those hours of speaking Chinese have kind of like warmed up my mouth so goddamn much that I feel like I am ready to go. I am going to eat someone's fucking face. Like, it's a really good warm-up exercise, even as a different language. Okay, anyway, let's watch this.
A few years ago, videos like how I learned English without studying or how I became fluent in Italian in 7 days went absolutely viral.
What do you mean a few days or years ago? These fucking are still going goddamn viral. There's like a new one of these every goddamn day of the week. Hell, we got an entire channel. Mr. Mikkel Hyper fucking Polyglot over here teaching you daily how to get fluent in a week and a fucking month and shit.
Along with something called comprehensible input. An idea that by simply being exposed to a language long enough, you will at some point become fluent in it. No active studying or hard work involved. In this video, I actually want to talk about why the comprehensible input method will not make you fluent and what to do instead. A little disclaimer before we start, I'm not relying on any scientific research for this video. Everything I say is based on my experience alone, so you're completely free to either agree or disagree. With that said, let's dive in. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the idea of active and passive learning.
Okay, before she goes forward, just for any like lurkers who randomly end up watching my video, I'm learning multiple languages. I've learned languages and I've used different methods along the way. I'm currently learning Spanish via pure input, which is what she was talking about just then. And I'm learning Chinese via a traditional approach of basically drills, grinding, everything. So I can see both sides very, very clearly, the differences. Often what will happen is YouTubers will make definitive statements about one method or the other and they've never actually learnt a language via that method. I'm not saying this is the case here. I'm just saying that I've at least got experience with this.
Passive learning, which is reading or listening, is essentially consuming language in a passive way, while active learning, writing or speaking, implies active practice of the language, either in a conversation or through writing something of your own. I strongly believe that comprehensible input, which is essentially passive learning put into very pretentious words, is a highly misleading idea that by simply surrounding yourself with a language and doing nothing else, you will master it almost magically. But here's the reality check. No amount of YouTube videos or TV shows will make you fluent in a language if that's
Okay, well, I can't talk to whether you would get fluent via comprehensible input. I see people make this claim all the time, but if we're just going off of my own subjective experiences, so far, using comprehensible input, about 450, somewhere hours around that amount in Spanish, I am currently at a B1 plus level of comprehension of Spanish. I'm at the stage now where I can start to understand dub shows. So, and I have done absolutely zero active study of this language. So, I'm assuming double those hours, triple those hours, I will fully understand the language. Now, the question for me comes around the fact, will I start being able to produce that language just in the moment? Or will I have to, no matter what, go to a more active speaking stage?
That's the only thing you do. There is another side to this very harmful argument, which some people phrase as, well, kids do learn languages this way, after all. And
I hate this argument so goddamn much. Everyone I see talk about kids really does not understand how fucking kids work. Okay? Kids do not follow any of the methods that we follow. They do everything at their disposal. They try to talk, they listen, they touch, they fondle, they do everything that they can in order to use the language, and they don't think about, what happens if I make a mistake, what happens if I establish a bad fucking pattern? No, they don't think about that. They just try to communicate.
To this, I have two things to say. Firstly, kids are surrounded by the language 24/7. And if you're an adult, I don't think you can afford to watch movies all day, every day for 5 years in the hope
This is also a bad argument because obviously kids don't 24/7 listen to the language as well. So for example, a baby's only going to be listening maybe a few hours per day because they're sleeping most of the time, or at least you hope they're sleeping most of the time. But then obviously as they get to toddler stage, they're going to be using the language a lot more actively throughout the whole day. But again, it's not 24/7.
Also becoming miraculously fluent in a language at some point. And secondly, I assume you're learning it to be able to converse on various topics using advanced vocabulary, not the primitive words at the level of a 5-year-old. At the same time, this is not me completely underestimating the importance of watching something in a foreign language. On the contrary, I think it's a crucial element that should not be ignored. That said, if this is the only method that you're relying on to reach fluency, then I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're on the wrong path. Now, of course,
Okay, I'm going to disagree with that statement, specifically around the fact that, okay, people enjoy learning languages in different ways, okay? Now, I agree so far with the argument that this is definitely not the most efficient method out there, okay? I would not recommend this as my go-to method for anyone. I've struggled trying to learn Spanish using this language, and Spanish is probably one of the most similar languages or easiest languages for an English speaker to learn and consume compared to, I don't know, most other languages out there, okay? However, at the same time, if you've tried the study approach and you just, for whatever reason, you can't study, you just don't, it just doesn't work for you, okay? And you enjoy watching content and you can sit there and do that for a few hours per day, then why not do that? Okay, it will, with time, result in you understanding the language better and better and better. You're going to consume an obscene amount of hours more than you would if you just traditionally studied. But at the same time, the goal here is at the end of the day to learn a language, and learning a language is going to take an obscene amount of hours. So if that is the only method that works for you, then do it. However, I would not recommend it as the first approach.
This ultimately leads us to the question of, what do I do then to become fluent? And my answer to this is very simple.
The only thing I don't like about most of these videos is the whole binary approach of this is right, this is wrong. None of these methods are wrong. They just have different levels of efficiency and work different, like better ways for different people. Now, just a pure input approach. From my own experience, it is definitely by far the slowest approach out there. However, it is also the least stressful approach, although it can be fucking stressful at times, which is something a lot of people who recommend the comprehensible input approach don't talk about, is it can be very stressful, specifically for a type of person who does not like to just deal with ambiguity over and over and knows of more efficient methods and can progress with those methods. So for someone like me, who I enjoy studying, I enjoy sitting down and, bashing out a problem and working my way through it. And then just sitting there and holding myself back from doing that. That is painful for me. So personally, for someone like me, I would definitely 100% not recommend a pure input approach. But some people, they're just happy to sit there and just watch.
We need to balance active and passive learning. Sounds straightforward, right? Yet active learning is actually something that a lot of people struggle with because, let's be frank, it requires a lot more effort than sitting in front of a screen watching yet another K-drama. Now, don't get me wrong, I love watching stuff in foreign languages, but I get use out of it not when I'm blindly following the subtitles, but when I'm actually able to recognize how words are formed, which tense is being used by the actor, and
Okay, so far she's spoken about, just sitting there watching K-dramas, and now she's talking about following subtitles. First up, if you're watching K-dramas, Korean dramas, I'm guessing you're already at a pretty high level within the language. So you have a pretty high comprehension. If you're watching that from day one, that's not comprehensible input. That's incomprehensible input, which is not going to help you in any way whatsoever. So you're doing it wrong from the get-go there. So obviously that's not what you're doing, okay? And if you are at that stage where you can watch K-dramas and you understand, then you're already pretty far along and you probably don't need a video like this. The second thing she spoke about there was subtitles, which depending on the approach you take and if you want to mix and match things, like if it's a pure input approach, you're not going to have subtitles. And unless the subtitles match what's actually being spoken, they're just going to be fucking annoying anyway.
And how words come together in a sentence. And no, this is not something that you will be magically able to understand or tune into if you have zero knowledge of grammar whatsoever. Speaking of active learning, if you're daunted by the prospect of having to write anything in a foreign language, I've actually made an entire video detailing how you can get into it even as a beginner. This is by far the easiest method that I came up with over the years of trying to overcome the friction and to finally begin to write. And if producing a piece of writing of your own feels like an impossible task, you can even start by writing down exercises or copying texts or dialogues by hand in your notebook.
If you want to see how I'm doing this, watch the video I dropped, the previous video to this one, where I literally walk you through the programs. Like, I've literally programmed myself programs that drill me on Chinese grammar. Okay, and it's all gaming grammar, because that is my goal, is to actually make gaming videos.
Because it still counts as active learning, at least in my books. This way, you'll be activating not only your visual system, but also your motor system, which will lead to a much better retention and memorization of new words and grammar structures. Whichever foreign language you're studying, I strongly urge you to ask yourself if you're leaning heavily in the direction of active or passive learning. Because if you're spending too much time consuming information and nearly not as much time writing or speaking, then your ability to express yourself in a foreign language will be quite poor compared to your passive understanding of it.
Okay, so I would also add to this, okay, this is a balancing act. You're always balancing these two things. So when you're at the beginning, like via my preferred approach, okay, and if someone can pick up on this approach, then great. That's probably the best way to move forward. But I would recommend from the beginning that you do some passive and a lot of active study. Try to get as much of the basics, the structure of the language into your head, basically the schema of the language. And then as you progress and you become, more towards an intermediate, you start consuming an equal amount of passive content. And then as you get to a more advanced level, then you basically move towards mainly passive and very little active content. Because by that stage, you should be starting to speak and use the language. So it's one of those things where you've constantly got to readjust in the moment and go, okay, well, I seem to be going pretty good at this moment with like passively understanding what I'm doing, but my speaking is lagging, so I need to start practicing that a bit more. And then if you get too good at speaking, which can happen, but your passive starts lagging in other areas, then you go back. So it's like, it's a constant balancing act. It's like anything, really.
Ultimately, I think we're learning foreign languages not only to be able to understand them, but to actually use them to connect with other people, either through conversations in a formal or informal setting, or through writing. Again, it can be anything ranging from a text message to a formal email to an academic paper.
Okay, and again, this is a misconception about what people use languages for. Yes, lots of people use languages, obviously, to communicate with people out there. However, there's lots of people that just want to consume content in language and have no desire to even communicate with people. So a pure input approach for those people is probably perfect because they really don't care about talking with people. Then you got people like me who I use Chinese daily with my wife and my family, but there's a whole subset of the language I have no desire to use with her. At least she has no desire to use with me. And that is gaming content. And I'm learning that and trying to get good at that to speak well. But understanding-wise, it's not so important. Although, obviously, eventually I want to do the, collab videos and stuff like that. But, there's also people who learn languages, ancient texts and stuff, and all they care about is transcribing. So, again, it comes down to what do you want to use the language for, what's your preferred method of learning, all these types of things.
Therefore, instead of simply stopping at having watched a movie, take the next step. Use those new words, learn additional grammar, so that the next time you're watching something in a foreign language, you're able to recognize more of what is being said and pick up new words in a way that makes sense. Personally, I like watching movies because they provide a great visual backdrop to what's being said, which eventually translates into visual association with new words. But again, if you do not do the dirty language work behind the scenes, if you do not study word formation, grammar, and other important elements of the language, then essentially you're passing on an opportunity to pick up new words and solidify grammar through a very enjoyable process of watching a movie.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing. See, I've gone through a journey, okay? before I started my pure input, comprehensible input journey to learn a language as kind of testing a methodology, I was probably in the same camp of her, of like, yeah, no, guys, this is not a smart idea. It's not effective. You're going to waste a lot of time, okay? And now that I'm about halfway through it, it's not that my thinking regarding whether it's effective or not has changed. It's the type of people that I've met who are using this method and are enjoying it over other methods. And what I've noticed is before I started this whole journey, it was like, I was pretty binary in my approach as well and saying, it's a bad idea. But now, as I've gone down this path, I've met these other people, I'm like, okay, I see a place for this. I definitely see a place for those who feel like the other methods have failed them. And because I am at heart, well, traditionally was like a tutor and a teacher, to me, it's not always about the most effective method. It's about whatever method actually makes you make progress. So if this works for you, then do it. It doesn't matter efficiency. The most effective method at the end of the day is the one that you actually do.
Equally, if you're already writing a lot and are trying to speak, you will accelerate your progress significantly by watching the proverbial movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, and reading a wide variety of texts. In this particular case, passive consumption will be effective because it will be proportional to your active practice of the language. Keyword here being proportional. All in all,
another thing she's talking about, consuming content in the language like movies and stuff like that. Depending on the language, that could be pretty far into the future when you start. Don't expect to start studying like with an active approach Korean day one and then go watch K-pops. It's going to be, it doesn't matter. You're not going to understand anything type of thing. And it's like, you can choose. Do you want to watch like really, really basic kids shows or even comprehensible input stuff? That's what I'd recommend if you're doing an active approach. But like watching movies with either approach it's way down the line, depending on the language, way down the line.
There is no magical shortcut to mastering a language. Just like any other area of our lives, it requires a well-rounded approach and a lot of time and practice. So please do not be misled by easy solutions that are trying to sell you fluency without any studying.
There is one thing I respect about a lot of the comprehensible input guys is they straight up say this is going to take you like 1,500 hours with Spanish to get to a B2 comprehensible level, and then have like probably a B1 ability to speak the language or something like that. So they're pretty straight up. Most of them are pretty honest about this. You don't have to have you don't need to worry about that too much. Most of the people that are selling bullshit are actually more on the traditional side, and they're like, oh, you just got to do like these magical spreadsheets and shit like this, and I've got the perfect amount of sentences for you to learn. Once you've like memorized these, boom, the whole language opens up to you. So like most of the bullshit's over there, or there is some guys that sell comprehensible bullshit in the fact that they'll say, oh, as long as you do like this amazing frequency list that I've got, you smash this out, then just do a bunch of comprehensible input, boom, this is the fastest method ever. So when I think about it, there's bullshit artists on all sides of the equation now, but most of those who are honest about comprehensible input will tell you straight up, it's going to take you a long time.
For what it's worth, language learning is satisfying because of the amount of effort you put into it.
Oh, but there was one guy who tried to sell some bullshit in the Dreaming Spanish community. I debunked him and he ended up deleting his YouTube channel.
And success, at least the way I see it, is being able to find ways to study that are both enjoyable and efficient. Thanks so much for watching this video. Subscribe for more language learning content, and I'll see you in the next one.
So she said enjoyable and efficient. I would say just enjoyable. Like, if you can do efficiency, even better. But at the end of the day, you need to make it enjoyable in some way. Unless you are an actual hardcore motherfucking grinder, where it doesn't matter if it's not enjoyable at all. But like, I think even us hardcore grinders, we've actually made the grind enjoyable. Like, I love just sitting there doing drills over and over. I can do an hour, like, until my brain burns out and I'm just like, oh, I'm just like fucking cooked type of thing. But at the end of it, it feels like I've gone to the gym. Like, that's a good point. I've never spoken about this before. So I just did 2 hours of gameplay drills in Chinese, okay? about an hour, and then an hour of like researching sentences and stuff. So about an hour of like drills. I was just drilling over and over these sentences, okay? Just practicing. Then I watch like a video of someone doing a walkthrough, and I'm just talking as if I am the player. And I'm fucking cooked. My body was hot. I was starting to get to the point where I was almost starting to sweat. Like, it's like a mental workout, okay? And I'm doing like a fucking, what do you call it? Like progressive overload of the brain over here. So yeah, if you're not cooked by the end of it, you're probably not, you're leaving some gains on the table, as they say. But it really depends on the person, okay? So like if you're in no hurry and you're just happy to sit there and watch some content, do that. Oh shit, we're at the end of the video. Wow, it's been a long time since I've seen an end screen on a video. Anyway, overall, I agree with the sentiment about the most efficient methods. So she's on point there. However, she is very binary in her approach. And as I've said many times before, and as I've progressed along my different journeys, you gotta remember that not everyone is you. Well, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, I will find you and I'll make you mentally fucking grind until you cook.